Some nights are louder than others, not with sound but with memory, with thoughts that won't line up neatly, with questions that circle instead of settling, with moments replayed like old film, a ceiling in the dark, a clock blinking red, breath counting itself. Outside, life keeps moving, cars pass, lights switch off, mornings keep arriving. But inside, something is still unfinished, still learning how to soften, how to breathe without bracing, how to feel safe in its own skin. Healing doesn't announce itself. It arrives in fragments, in small acts of courage, in choices no one sees, in learning to carry the past without letting it decide the future, in finding language for pain and purpose for survival. Welcome to What Would They Say?
Before we continue today's conversation, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we live, work and record. Today, Rob is joining us from Wadawurrung land, and Shannon and I are recording here at Bellevue Studios on Wonnarua land. We pay our respects to elders past and present and honour the strength, wisdom and knowledge passed down through generations. As we focus today on people, healing and lived experience, we recognise that First Nations cultures hold some of the oldest and deepest understandings of resilience, connection and care in the world. We acknowledge that this wisdom continues to guide and teach, and we thank those who carry it forward.
It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Kindness, honesty, responsibility and respect. If I hadn't forgiven him, I'd be chained to him for the rest of my life with anger and bitterness and resentment, dragging him around.
If everybody conducted themselves with the same integrity you do, Rob, the world would look very, very different. Last week we stood in place, in bushland and a classroom, by quiet, winding roads that led a group of children and their teacher away from the Wooreen State School in South Gippsland, where an ordinary day became something else entirely. If you haven't heard that episode, we'd encourage you to go back and listen to that before continuing with Rob's story, because today we're standing somewhere different. This is our very first episode of What Would They Say? A place where stories are rooted not in landscape but in people, in memory, in reflection, and in the wisdom that only comes from lived experience. In part 1, Rob Hunter shared what happened to him in 1977, how he and his students became part of one of Australia's most confronting hostage situations. But moments like that don't just shape where you've been. They shape who you become. They influence how you listen, how you respond, how you show up for others, how you make meaning from pain. Over the decades that followed, Rob learned how to carry his experience with honesty and purpose. He went on to write an exceptional book called Day 9 at Wooreen and founded the Kidnapped Teacher Talks program, supporting young people through their own journeys of healing after hurt. Today's conversation is about that wisdom, the insight earned through struggle, the clarity forged through hardship, the generosity of spirit that grows when suffering is met with care. This is a story about what remains, what is passed on, and how one life deeply lived can become a guide for others. We are honoured to continue this conversation. Welcome back, Rob.
Hi Shannon again. Hi Megan. Hi everyone.
Hi.
So we ended our last episode just moving into what things look like for you after your ordeal and after Edwin John Eastwood had been captured and taken into custody. When everything was finally over and you'd made your police statements and you'd gone back to school, the kids had been reunited with their families, who were you when you woke up the next morning? Were you the same person or were you someone new?
I didn't sleep. I think I didn't sleep that night at all, I don't think. I don't think I slept a wink just because I'd been through such an ordeal. Yeah, I guess I guess I was different. I didn't know I was different. I still thought I was the same person. I thought I'd just been through an ordeal and I'd get over it. And in a sense I did, but things played off in my mind in a weird way. Yeah, I don't quite know how to answer that really, Shannon. When we got back to the school after the police took us back, the children were reunited. That was a fairly awkward time. The parents were probably more traumatized than what the children were, and even what I was. So they weren't worried about me one little bit. They were just ecstatic to get their kids back, and I was left in no man's land really. Thankfully, my housemate, met me at school that day, that afternoon, as did my DI, the district inspector, my boss, and he said, "Well done, Rob. I hope you're okay. You can have the rest of the week off."
What day was this? How many days was the rest of the week?
So we got kidnapped on the Monday. We were saved on the Tuesday. I got back to the school on the Tuesday night, sort of, I don't know, 4:30 or something,
3 days
with the
off.
police.
Thanks so much.
So I went back to school on the Monday, but the worst part was my school had been sort of ruined in a way because the eldest four kids all went into Leongatha, and I only had the five youngest kids for the rest of the year, and a schism or a division had emerged within the community. The families that took their children into Leongatha for the rest of the year were a bit alienated then from the families that stayed. It wasn't an easy decision for them, and those that stayed felt a bit, I think, let down by the ones that left, and so I had just these five children. There were three families involved in that, so it was fairly awkward, really. Not the ideal first year out for a primary teacher.
No, I want to ask this question, and it's okay if you don't want to answer it, but I have heard you talk about in those early moments when the parents had realised that the kids were missing, that there had been some questions around whether you might have been the perpetrator of the kidnapping. How did that land for you?
Yeah, it didn't land well at all in my immature, naive state of mind. I was I was amazed, but looking back on it in retrospect, months, years later, okay, fair enough. I was this young, green 20-year-old that they didn't know anything about much, really. They knew I was a qualified teacher, but they'd only met me once. We had this barbecue on the Wednesday night in the previous week as a get to know you. The school council and I had organised, and I met all the parents, and I thought, beauty, we're right now, we're friends. Um, and naively, I thought I'd come across as um, you know, a character that could be trusted, for example, or that was professional, or that was a good teacher. Um, but I realise now, there's no way that people can come up with that sort of a opinion just from one visit. So, yeah, they thought I'd done the deed. They thought I'd taken the children away deliberately. And when I found out that night, on the Tuesday night after we'd been saved, that's what they'd thought, I was I was devastated, which was one of the main reasons why I didn't sleep that night.
Yeah, I imagine. What was it like going back after a couple of days that you were so generously given off, going back into the classroom, carrying that thing that nobody else could see?
It wasn't an ordinary day because the press were there and there was all the parents were there, and I was going to try and do a normal classroom, run a normal school day, and nothing went to plan at all. I had known that the two eldest girls were leaving, but I hadn't heard about the second two children leaving. And it wasn't until that morning that their parents arrived to collect their children's books and to let me know that they were leaving. And so that hit me on that Monday morning following. Um, they probably turned up at 9 o'clock, and all the press were there. They saw the awkward conversation between the parents and I, and they're videoing it, and it went on national news and in the papers. And so it was sort of a bit sensational. It was very awkward conversation. I felt for them. I didn't blame them at all. I just had to accept it. And so that meant the four children left, and I only had the five younger ones.
What did it feel like speaking to the media?
So, yeah, I'm not the best public speaker, I suppose, going around.
I think you're doing an
They
excellent
asked,
job.
they asked awkward questions. They wanted to hear me being angry and wanting to get even, basically, with Eastwood. So I didn't quite know how to answer that because I wasn't a vindictive type person or a retaliatory. I was quite forgiving, really. And all I could say was, I'm just thankful for the way in which it all turned out. Thankful for Robin Smith's heroism and the police's heroic feats, etc., and that I still had my job and the kids were all safe. So the press were an absolute pain in the bum, but I felt like I needed to deal with it still.
Yeah, I wonder about that. In the previous episode, we talked about, there being no formal debrief process outside of giving a statement of evidence, which obviously gives you a moment to run through the experience. But the police's job is to collect a brief of evidence that they're going to use against Eastwood in court. It's not really around the emotional impact on you. And I think it's a wonderful thing that in legal cases now, people are able to give victim impact statements. I think that can be, and I never like to use the word closure because I think some traumas don't ever have closure. You just learn how to manage and get through things. But there's an importance in having your voice heard and the truth of the experience for you. When you gave your police report, and obviously the media stuff afterwards, it's not the same as sitting down with someone and saying, this is how this felt for me. Do you think that things might have looked a bit different for you if you were given that opportunity?
Yeah, probably. I thought I got over it. I naively, really, I think, thought I'd got over it easily because I had such good supports around me, family, friends, a lovely girlfriend at the time. Sport. I went home when I went back to Kyabram. I played cricket that on the Saturday and caught up with people all over that week, all that weekend. I think one of my mates had a 21st birthday that Saturday night, and I thought I'd got over it. I thought I was fine, and maybe I was in a way. I spout now that gratitude and forgiveness and having an outward focus on reaching out in kindness to people was healing and healthy, and it is, but I don't think I could have possibly got over what I went through. Um, it had an impact on me that I still can't quite measure. Mm.
When was the first time that you noticed maybe that impact was more than what you initially thought? If you're sort of moving through afterwards and you're thinking, yep, I'm doing okay, I'm back to work, I'm enjoying my hobbies and my sporting activities and I'm socialising and I'm doing all the things, when did that show up for you where you thought, oh, hang on, there's something here that's still sticking?
Yeah, it's a good question because I don't think I ever really twigged. But on my way to school each morning, I'd have thoughts, and I'd think about things like the gun that I nearly grabbed, and I'd have cold sweat and palpitations, and I'd sort of get a rush of blood to my head. That's a classic PTSD type symptom. You know, I had those sort of thoughts, and I had lots of other flashbacks about traveling on dirt roads and going around corners, and those sorts of flashbacks happened consistently. But I never thought that that was anything other than normal.
Mm.
So yeah, it wasn't until I did a counselling course, 15 years ago, 35 years after the event, that I realised, okay, yeah, I probably went through PTSD. Yeah.
I think that'd be really understandable. Anyone going through what you went through to have those signs and symptoms of PTSD. It's a hugely traumatic situation. We did an episode a couple of weeks ago about me getting locked in my toilet with a brown snake, which is not as terrifying as having a man hold a gun to your head. But I've been watching, and the different
I don't know about that.
the difference is that I am quite trauma informed currently here in this life, in this world. I wasn't when I was 20, but here at 45, I am. And I'm seeing those moments where it's being re-triggered and that fight or flight thing is being kicked in around it. And we laugh. It was a snake. Everyone was okay. But there are things like little noises when I hear a scurry on the ground, or I had a lizard run over my foot the other day that almost sent me into a complete panic attack. Those things are real, and I can laugh about that because I am okay. I am doing fine. I'm moving along. It's not, that is very, very different to what you experienced. And if I can be put back into fight or flight mode from a small lizard running over my foot, you talking about saying, oh, yeah, I could have been suffering from PTSD. I think that's profound in the fact that there was no one there to say, hey, Rob, I think you might need to, have a chat about this, and that those things weren't offered to you. I know it was a different time and it was a different place and we understood things differently. But do you think that maybe not having that has played a part in where you've gone next?
You're thinking about me now working in a wellbeing sector.
Yeah, I
In a
think about
school.
writing the book, and I think about your kidnapped teacher program. You have moved forward, and it seems to me that your purpose is to do exactly for other people the thing that you didn't get for yourself.
That's right. Yeah. Look, yeah. So the counselling course was a bit of a aha moment when I delved into some psychology and some effects of trauma and the symptoms and the whole thing about um, listening and empathy and supporting people through their traumas. That was a bit of it was cathartic in a sense. I hadn't been writing the book at that time. That was sort of back in the late 2000s. I was doing that, or mid 2000s, I think. I didn't start writing the book until 2000 and a few years later, anyway. Um, Towards the end, probably just after I finished the counselling course. I think I've always been a relational type person that bounced off people and needed to talk about important things rather than just superfluous things. So I think that was probably that would have been a thing prior to this kidnapping experience. But once I did the counselling course, I realised, no, look, what I really want to do is talk about important things. I don't want to just talk about superfluous, above the line, everyday happenings. I want to actually talk about feelings and hurtful situations and deal with stuff that people really struggle with. So yeah, that was how I got into the um, well-being chaplaincy side of things, and then my kidnapped teacher talks as well. It was in sync with that. Health after hurt. How do you overcome trauma? Um, this is how I overcame the trauma, and maybe this might be helpful for you too. I can't possibly understand fully your trauma, but um, these things might be of some assistance. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about the teacher talks? Are you supporting adults who have had trauma or their students?
My aim, thanks Megan, good question. My aim really is for secondary students at school, to be able to talk to them. And prior to COVID, I was doing that full time, going all over the state, really, doing seminars, telling the story, and then talking about the health, my health after the hurt, and therefore the way in which they were going to handle their hard times. And I'd say things to the kids like, obviously, I hope you don't get kidnapped at some stage, but stuff does happen in a life. Life is nothing surer. You're going to have hard times, and some of you possibly already had things even as hard as me. Um, and these are my three or four things that I've found really helpful in being able to get it. And so we tease out gratitude, what it means to actually train our minds and think about what we're grateful for, um, rather than wishing away our lives and wishing we had this, that, or the other, and how it changes our mental state, it changes our mindset. Gratitude's probably the one that I find easier to talk about. The harder one is forgiveness, because that's complicated, and it was relatively easy for me to forgive because my perpetrator was caught and he's in jail. So it'd be silly for me to stay angry at him. It's only going to hurt me. So we talk about what forgiveness looks like, what it's not. It's not saying it's okay. It's not saying you've got to be best friends with that person ever again. And it's not saying you're going to forget, but being able to let go of the desire to stay angry and bitter and resentful. So I used the illustration about the chain around my wrist. If I hadn't forgiven him, I'd be chained to him for the rest of my life with anger and bitterness and resentment, dragging him around.
Mm.
What the heck? How stupid is that?
Yeah.
Um, I'm only hurting myself. I become angry. I become a bitter person. I become a poor husband, teacher, father, friend, an angry person, which is certainly not what I wanted. So forgiving was a no-brainer.
But that makes sense. But it's a lot easier to say than to do. Are you saying that you think because justice was served in this situation, you found it easier to forgive than perhaps some of the people you support through trauma?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was sort of part of my DNA. I'd been brought up, there was a strong faith based thinking with that. I've been forgiven. I know if you want to be forgiven, then you need to forgive.
Mm.
Um, and if I want people to forgive me when I do something stupid in the future, which and I have, thankfully, people have forgiven me. So forgive as you've been forgiven is a good line, I reckon.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think enough people talk about when you hold on to that anger and resentment, just what it does to your body. It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. There's so much that bubbles away. I really resonated with this part of your story, Rob, and the reason why I can't go into, because the story belongs to somebody who I love very, very much. But forgiveness was a huge part that I struggled with for a very, very long time. And it was destroying me, that feeling of resentment. And while we were supporting this person that we cared about, and the perpetrator of their pain was just out in the world, living a happy and normal life. And, I didn't wish harm upon that person, but it was something that played a role in my everyday, and being able to move past that and say, well, you know what, forgiving you doesn't make what happened okay, but it makes it a lot safer for me and for the people that I love, for me not to be walking around with that anger and resentment inside of my body. It was such a huge weight that shifted. And I was a 40-year-old woman when I was going through this. I am just so excited that there is someone in this space teaching these skills to young people. Emotional literacy is such an important part of all facets of our life. I wonder, well, first of all, how do the kids respond to your story and the things that you're talking to them about?
Initially, they don't believe the story. They say, "Are you making this up?" And I say, I don't blame you for thinking that, because it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
But when I show them the pictures and when I give them the details and I show them the media reports and all of that, okay, that's real. So that's one of the responses. But the forgiveness one, occasionally I'll have a kid who shakes their head, and I say, look, that's fair enough. I can't tell you to forgive, and you probably need help. I'd encourage you to seek help with a counsellor, a chaplain, or someone you trust. Talk this through, because, as you've just said, Shannon, if you can't let it go, it's going to eat you, and you're going to become the person that's angry um, you know, okay, there's an angry emotion, but you actually become an angry person. It
Yeah.
becomes part of your character if you can't let it go.
How did you go, Rob, writing your book, having to relive it from start to finish?
And again now, Shannon, you made him do it again.
Yeah, well, that's right. I really love talking about it now. Writing the book, um, I enjoy doing that too, to a large extent, and it was cathartic, but it was also traumatic. I had tears and I got angry again. And my wife would be out for the day and she'd come home, and she's the best counsellor I've ever had. Um, she'd listen, bless her heart, and I'd share realizations of how awful what had happened, and how I had to forgive again because I realised how inappropriate the stuff was. So, how did I go writing the book? Yeah, well, there's lots of layers to that because I wanted to write the book from sort of day one in a sense because it was such a crazy story, had so many twists and turns and quite a saga. So many, day nine, my ninth day of my teaching career, 9 children, the miracle of Robin Smith having the accident, nearly getting killed, the police heroics, all those sorts of things. I wanted to celebrate that, but I couldn't really because there was a lot of other people involved and they were going through trauma. So I didn't want to step on their toes and make a division or a scene. I had to tread carefully. Yes, I was the teacher, but those parents had gone through hell, worse hell than me, really. And the kids had too. And so I had to bide my time. And as I said, it took about 37, 38 years for me to, okay, I've got to actually. And the turning point that got me to this point was one of those girls that left the school, one of the grade 6 girls, came to see me in Kyabram, drove all the way up from Leongatha to visit and to say thank you. A simple word, it really it opened the gate, and we bawled our eyes out, both of us. And she was just so lovely. She was a mother of adult children by this stage, and 35 years had passed when she decided she really needed to find me and actually say thanks for the way in which I'd conducted myself through that ordeal. It was gorgeous. So that really opened a whole door to her family and then another family that she was related to. And then I was able to reconnect with all of the players. And then we had a 40-year reunion, and they basically gave me permission or a blessing to, yes, by all means, Rob, write a book.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you guys all got together. How are the other players in this saga doing? I know we've lost some.
Yeah, that's right. Both of the angels have passed away. Greg Peterson's passed away. Thankfully, all the children are well. In a sense, they're well. They've all been through trauma and they've all handled it in different ways. But it's been so good to reconnect. We've had a couple of gatherings, or quite a few gatherings, really. And we're approaching now 50 years. And I'm looking forward to doing another something special. I don't know what it's going to be. I think I'll try and let them play the tune, and as in the students who are now, most of them, grandparents. That says something about my age. I was only 10 years older than most of them.
My youngest son finished year 6 last year and has moved on to high school this year. And I, like the teacher said to me at the time, oh, I love this group so much. They've got a special place in my heart. this is a whole new level of that connection to those kids, and for you to be able to be connected and see them move into adulthood, and I suppose it's really important for them too to have that connection to you.
Yeah, it's been really sweet, really sweet. They're all gorgeous people, and they've had to work through their traumas, their fears, and their anger and their bitterness, and in their own way. And their parents, were, you know, children and parents are obviously so connected. Some of them have gone through, had a real tough time, um, but they've all turned out being just beautiful people. Yeah.
Mm.
And while we're talking about the players in the story from the first episode, Eastwood was convicted for how long? What's he doing?
The kidnapping happened in February 14, 15. Later that year, it wasn't until I think September, there was a court case where most of us had to testify. I spent a good hour and a half in the witness box, which was a little bit traumatic. Eastwood was convicted on all those counts of kidnapping, and he was given what at the time called a life sentence, which I think was 25 years. But once again, on good behaviour, it was good behaviour that got him to Geelong from Pentridge Prison. Once again, on good behaviour, he was out of jail after 17 years after the kidnapping, released, and he was a free man. So he was a free man for a long time. I think he's now passed away. I've heard that he's passed away by all reports. There's a few reports that it had. It wasn't much publicity about it, but I like to think at least was a reformed man. He'd stayed out of the press for the last 20 years of his life.
You've taken forgiveness to the next level then. Amazing.
Yeah.
Rob, I wonder, what would you tell the version of yourself now, as you knowing everything that you know now? What would you tell the Rob back then who walked into that classroom in 1977?
Yeah, I don't know, Shannon. Probably do exactly the same things as what you did, really.
Yep.
Stay calm, be kind, do whatever you can to get through it.
Yeah. And that was the answer I was hoping you were going to give, because I was listening to you in that first episode talking about thinking, there's that opportunity for me to get the gun. There's, all the different things along the way and the places where you second guessed yourself. But the outcome where you, the other men, the girls, the angels, and the kids all made it out. You said in the first episode, that was the only heroic thing that I did. But you were far more heroic than just pulling a clock out of the wall. You managed to stay calm. You managed to keep your eyes on what was going on. You were surveying the situation. I don't think that those other people there could have had a better person there to support them through it either.
Maybe. Thanks, Shannon.
Is there anything else you want to pass on to the listeners before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, I've talked about gratitude. I talked about forgiveness, and I mentioned one of the others of having an outward focus of kindness, and that's good therapy too. Thinking about how other people feel, how can I help you get your mind off yourself, and in being able to help somebody else, it's so good, such good therapy. So inadvertently, I practiced that by continuing teaching and focusing on job and sport and youth group and church and friends and all that sort of stuff. Inadvertently, I was having therapy that I didn't know I was having by being kind and thoughtful and loving to other people. Um, the fourth thing in my little recipe of health after hurt is having something to believe in, standing on a strong foundation of knowing what you believe, values, faith. At the school where I'm working now, we have four beautiful values: kindness, honesty, responsibility, and respect. And they're such good values. And I spout those to the kids all the time, along with a few others like gratitude and forgiveness. And they they look at me and they listen, and I tell them stories of pull up videos of Finding Nemo to help explain it often. But those four key things will help you get through that trauma.
I can't think of a better thing to be talking to young people about.
You've just been completely inspiring. I always need this little wrap up at the end of the traumatizing stories to know that everything's okay, and it's not okay what happened to you, but you've taken the best out of this worst situation, and I'm just so inspired by the lives that you're changing still now because of it.
Thanks, Megan. Thank you. Yeah, well, that's very kind. Experiences we have shape us, don't they? And that certainly has shaped me. It's had a massive impact. But I love it that good can come out of bad. I mean, so many people explain that, the most important thing in life is relationships, and being able to help somebody else gives me such a kick, such a buzz that I can't help but want to do it as much as I can for as long as I can.
Your ethos is entirely aligned with our why we do this. It is the thing that will change the world. It doesn't just heal people after hurt. If everybody conducted themselves with the same integrity you do, Rob, the world would look very, very different.
Thanks, Shannon.
As we come to the end of this conversation, we want to thank Rob, not just for sharing what happened on the 9th day at Wooreen, but for sharing everything that followed, for trusting us with his story, for speaking with honesty and generosity, and for choosing again and again to turn lived experience into something that helps others feel less alone. Rob is the author of Day 9 at Wooreen and the founder of the Kidnapped Teacher Talks program, where he works with young people, educators and communities to build emotional literacy, resilience and healing after hurt. So if today's conversation has resonated with you, we encourage you to seek out Rob's work. Rob, where is the best place for our listeners to find you?
Online, Kidnapped Teacher Talks, Facebook, Instagram, website. The book, Day 9 at Wooreen, you can get online too, through me at the website too, if you like, or through Wilkinson Publishing, and then a number of other sources as well. Yeah, I'd love to be able to do a seminar at your secondary college. Could be any business. I'd be happy to talk to any community group or organisation too. And I'd love you to be able to read Day 9 at Wooreen.
Rob, we're deeply grateful for your time and your openness and the care that you bring to this work. Thank you for trusting us to have this conversation, and thank you for walking us through both the hardest and most meaningful parts of your journey. And thank you for the lives you continue to touch through your work. To everyone listening, thank you for holding this story with us. We will link, as we always do, all of these things in the show notes. So if people are looking for a very easy way to find Rob, you can jump over to ifthesetreescouldtalk.com.au and we will have links to the book, the program, Rob's social media. And I encourage you to go and have a look at his socials because he's continually sharing insight and resources and hope. It's a really lovely place to be.
Thanks a lot, Shannon. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, listeners. Lovely sharing with you.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode. If These Trees Could Talk and What Would They Say are productions of Bellevue Studio. Our host is Shannon Walters, executive and audio production by Megan Anderson, with socials and marketing managed by Mia Oberdorf. We always appreciate hearing your thoughts, so if you would like to support the show, you can rate, review and subscribe. To stay up to date between episodes, you can also find us on Instagram, Facebook and TikTok. For more information on this episode or to connect with our guests, you'll find everything you need to know in the show notes at ifthesetreescouldtalk.com.au. We're grateful to have you with us and we look forward to sharing what comes next. Thanks for being here.